welcome. You're listening to the Just Love Them podcast. This is a place where we seek to find peace, understanding, and love for those we care about who have left their faith. I want to read a testimonial by health coach Bam, who comments on Megan Farner's podcast a couple of weeks ago and says, I took 2.5 pages of notes. Great content. Thanks for that. Have you ever played the game tug-of-war? The game where there's a big rope and people line up on each side of it and you try and pull the other team to your side. Usually right in the middle, there's a line. They put a line of some sort, or I've seen it done with like a little mud pit in the middle and the really thick rope. And then you get as many people on each side as you can, hopefully evened out. And you play this tug of war game where each side tries to pull the other team across the line or across into the mud pit, and each team's trying to win. Tug of war can be a really fun game. Today, I want to talk about a different kind of tug of war. This game is a mental game, and it's played when each participant is determined to have something their way. Anytime you're determined to have something your way, or the other person is determined to have something their way, you have a mental tug of war. Neither one of you are willing to give up pulling it your way. You're both willing to put in energy to pull things in your own direction. My husband and I had such a mental tug of war over our bathtub. So we have this bathtub and we really like it. It's one of those jetted tubs and it's really fun. And we both really like to use it. My husband really cares about how it's cleaned out. He wants it cleaned out in a certain way. The inside, he wants it to be a certain way, using a certain method to clean it. Well, I don't care so much about that so long as it's clean. But what I care about is the surround of the bathtub. When someone's done taking a bath, I want things put away in a certain way. I want them back in their spot. I want it to look clean. I want it to look nice. I want everything to be orderly on the surround of the bathtub. And so my husband and I have had this little tug of war where he's trying to get me to clean out the bathtub the way he wants it. And I'm pulling, trying to get him to clean the surround of the bathtub in the way I want it. So he pulls his way and I pull my way. And there's been a little bit of back and forth about it over a period of time, this tug of war over the way that we take care of this space. Well, just like in the physical game, there's eventually, in this mental game of tug of war, there's a winner and there's a loser. And if there's a mud pit in the middle, the loser can wind up with mud on their face. But unlike the physical game, where the whole thing may be done in a spirit of fun and everyone might still be happy and laughing at the end, in a mental game of tug of war, the push and pull of this unhealthy game can cause damage to the relationship. Each side is struggling to be in control. It becomes a battle of the wills, and the winner wins at some negative expense to the relationship. Doesn't that sound like an awful game? Who would ever want to play such a game? And yet, many of us do all the time. We're struggling to win, and we're not even realizing that playing this game at all can be damaging to our relationships. So why do we play? Why do we play this game of tug of war? Well, we want to be right. We want to have control. We want to have things our way. That's what's on the surface. But what lies underneath the surface of those desires? There's something deeper. I'd like you to think about someone that you have had a tug of war with, a mental tug of war. It could be someone recent. It could be someone in the past. And if you need to pause this episode while you think of someone, go ahead and do that. Have you got somebody in mind? I want you to think about what might be the underlying reason that you might be playing this game with them, or that you might have played this game with them. And if you're in a place where you can write down the person that you had the tug of war with, do that. I'm going to go over some deeper reasons why you might play this game. And as I do so, if you're in a place where you can write it down, I'd like you to write which one resonates for you about why you need to play this game to win. I'm going to give you 8 possibilities. This is by no means an all-inclusive list, but these are some common ones. You might have played this game because you felt unsafe. You felt uncertain, you felt vulnerable, you felt unsafe. You needed to play so that you could feel safe. Or you may have played the game in order to reduce anxiety, anxiety about unpredictable outcomes. The third possibility is you may have played the game because you have a need for order. You need to create a sense of order so that your life is not chaos or that the situation is not chaos. Another reason you might play this game is because of perfectionism, a belief that your way is the right way and that others won't meet your standards. A fifth reason that you might have played this game is a need to feel valued or significant. If someone feels unloved or unappreciated or powerless, they might play this game in order to feel valued or significant. Another reason you might play this game is because of trauma or past experience. If you've experienced situations where you felt powerless, you might be overcompensating by trying to control everything now. The seventh possibility is tying the outcome to your self-esteem, a fear of not being capable or being successful or being worthy. And an eighth possibility is you might be playing the game because you're trying to avoid mistakes or criticism. Which one resonated for you? Any of those? Like I said, this is not an all-inclusive list, but you might have played this tug of war game with someone because of one of these reasons. Everything comes in layers. Just like I said, the top layer was that we generally have played this mental tug of war to win because we wanted to be right, we wanted to have control, we wanted to have things our way. But what was under that was that list of 8 things that I just mentioned. Well, guess what? That's not the bottom layer. There's another layer underneath that layer. And that layer is fear. Fear of something. And so I'm going to go over the list again, and I want you to think of whatever you wrote down or whichever one you identified that may have resonated for you. I want you to think about, what am I afraid of and why? And again, if you're able to write this down, you're going to have a really good experience with this because you may be able to identify what you're afraid of and why you're afraid of it. And once you get to that, you can let it go. So with feeling unsafe, it could be a possibility of feeling unsafe, a fear of uncertainty, fear of vulnerability. The second one, reducing anxiety. You might have a fear of an unpredictable outcome. On the third one, a need for order. You might have a fear of chaos. These are all just possibilities for these. The fourth one, which is perfectionism. Again, that kind of a need for order and perfectionism really go hand in hand. So again, a possibility could be a fear of chaos. The fifth one was a need to feel valued or significance. You might ask yourself, where are you feeling fear of being unloved or unappreciated or powerless, that you need to play the game in order to feel valued or significant? The sixth one is trauma or past experience that colors the way you see things. If you've experienced situations where you felt powerless, you might overcompensate by trying to control everything. And in that case, you may want to explore fears surrounding that. Some traumas can be worked through much more quickly with professional help, as with any of these. If it's really extreme, professional help can always be a benefit. The seventh one was tying outcomes to your self-esteem. This could be because of a fear of not being capable, a fear of not being successful, a fear of not being worthy. And the eighth one, trying to avoid mistakes or criticism. This can stem from a fear of failure or a fear of judgment. When my oldest daughter was 18, she moved out of the house. She was tall, thin, and gorgeous. And her younger sisters, who were 13, 9, and 7, thought she was the living end. I have referred to this story briefly in another podcast episode, so you might recognize that. This daughter had chosen not to follow in the path that we had raised her in. Now, modesty was something that we heavily emphasized as our girls were growing up. We tried to buy them modest clothes. We made sure that they wore modest clothes. As I look back now, I was playing this tug of war game a little too much because we did really extreme things like making sure the girls' skirts came to their knees. So, this oldest daughter moves out, comes back to visit frequently, which is a great thing, right? Like she wants to come home, she wants to hang out, she wants to visit her siblings, maybe her parents, maybe not. As she comes over, she is now free to dress however she wants. And because we had held her too tightly, we'd played this tug of war game too tightly with her. And so she wore everything that she had not been allowed to wear when she was raised in our home. Well, when she came to the house, she'd come in these outfits that were super, super cute and super not modest in my very strict opinion. Her younger sisters just thought she was so wonderful and so amazing, and they wanted to be like her in every way, shape, and form. Well, quite honestly, this scared me half to death because I did not want them to dress the way she was dressing. I am ashamed to admit, I played that tug of war game so hard with this daughter to the point where when she would come over, I would ask her to put on a t-shirt over whatever she was wearing because it was always, in my opinion at the time, not modest. And because she was an obliging person, she did it. And she didn't say much about it. She let me win the tug of war when she was at our house. I look back now and I realize that what I had was a fear of not being in control. The thing about playing tug of war, like I said earlier, this mental tug of war, this unhealthy game, damages relationships. And that's exactly what it did. And because I was bigger and stronger emotionally than my children, I almost always won. And what I didn't realize was that by winning, I was not actually winning. I was actually damaging the relationship. And so as I insisted that that daughter dress a certain way and put on a t-shirt, and I sent her that very strong message of, you're not doing the right thing. You're not doing what I want. That fear of having to be in control. I damaged that relationship. And I damaged it over and over and over something that didn't really matter. That was my fear. My three younger daughters, they were going to grow up to be who they were anyway. They were going to do what they wanted anyway. And did I need to guide and direct them in their young age? Absolutely. Did I need to play tug of war with my oldest daughter out of fear of what my younger daughters were going to do? I look back now and I see that for me, it was the absolute wrong thing to do. But I played the game and the relationship was damaged. Not always in the moment that I could tell because she was quiet and compliant. But underneath, the damage was happening. In the years since, I've had to do a lot of work and a lot of apologizing to heal that relationship. And because she's a gracious and forgiving person, we have a great relationship today. How much better would it have been if I had never played the game over things that didn't matter? There are times when this game is worth playing, when something bigger than the relationship is at play. For example, underage teenager who's living in your home and is doing drugs. Safety and parental responsibility is much bigger than the damage to the relationship. It's not that we don't want to play the game, it's that we need to learn when to play the game. I'm talking about becoming aware of places where you're playing tug of war and damaging your relationships and what you could do instead. I'd like to teach you a new game called Drop the Rope. Drop the rope helps heal relationships instead on things that don't matter. Now, you've got to know when to play this game and when not to. And only you can know how much to pull. Dropping the rope is just like playing tug of war. If one person is on each side of the rope and both are pulling and one drops the rope, the other person automatically is going to win the game. When we're having a mental tug of war and one person is willing to drop the rope, it allows the other person to win the mental game. And it does something positive for the relationship. Usually, you don't consider giving up a positive thing, but think about it more like you're letting go. You're letting go of that issue that's that mental tug of war. You're letting go of that issue. You're letting the other person win. And that actually helps put something positive into the relationship. It helps heal the relationship. Let's go back to the bathtub story between my husband and I. My husband and I both decided to drop the rope. My husband quit saying things about the way I cleaned the bathtub. And in fact, he decided that if he didn't like the way it was cleaned, he would just clean it out himself before he started the tub for himself. He dropped the rope. I quit making comments about the way the surround of the tub was kept. I completely dropped the rope. I either cleaned it up myself, or I put it in a corner, or I just left it. I dropped the rope. And when you drop the rope, it can even become a win-win situation. Learning how to play the game is about learning when to pull, how hard, and when to drop that rope. It's about being intuitive about when the game's not worth it and when it's time to drop the rope. When it's damaging the relationship, especially when the issue doesn't really matter and you're just acting out of fear. And I'm not talking about the kind of fear that keeps you safe, but the kind that damages relationships. Do you want to stand up for yourself? Yes. Do you want to have healthy boundaries? Yes, absolutely. Do you want to play tug of war? Only when you need to. And if you know a new game called Drop the Rope that you can play when you don't need to play tug of war, your relationships will improve. You see, I spent years playing tug of war out of fear, needing to control everything and everyone in my house. At the time, I ran unchecked. I was thinking that I should have things my way. I was the mom. But later I learned that while my kids couldn't win the game against me at the time, I was nevertheless causing damage. After I spent some time learning to drop the rope, we had a grown son who asked if he could move home for a year in order to save money. We sat down with him and we agreed that we would each be willing to negotiate on some things so that he could move home and save money. One of the things we wanted on our side was we wanted, if he was going to live with us and we weren't going to charge him, we wanted him to go to church with us. He did not want to go to church with us. And a small tug of war began. Ultimately, he decided that he would rather not move home and not save a year's worth of rent rather than go to church, at which point we decided that we wanted to drop the rope. Not worth it. Not wanting to damage the relationship, but in fact wanting to heal and help the relationship. We conceded. We dropped the rope. He moved in. He was here for a year. He was a delight to have at home. We loved having him here. We had many good times together, many good memories, good conversations, opportunities that we would not have had we not been willing to drop the rope, and that we were acting on out of fear. So whenever it doesn't matter, drop the rope. Don't play. Just give them a hug and just love them instead. I invite you to go back to that scenario that you thought of, someone you've had or are having a tug of war with. Consider which underlying reason resonates with you. And if none of those resonated with you, find one that does. And then ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And why? When you answer those questions, and you figure out what your fear is and why you have that fear, then you're able to let it go. You can let it go. It's an amazing experience. And then you'll be able to drop the rope. And when you drop the rope, your relationships will improve. If you've enjoyed this podcast, will you do me a favor? Will you share it with someone? And if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation or join the Facebook group, I will leave that information in the show notes. Please join me again for another episode of Just Love Them.